How does a city that's celebrated as India's cleanest for 8 years running suddenly start poisoning its own people through their kitchen taps? It sounds impossible, right? Well, that's exactly what happened in Indore.
And just let that sink in for a second. This isn't a newspaper headline. This is a direct quote from the Madhya Pradesh High Court. They're not just calling it a tragedy. They're saying the city went from being famous for being clean to infamous for poisoning its residents. It's a staggering betrayal.
So, the big question is, how on earth does this happen? Especially in a place like Indore. That's what we're going to unpack. We're going to peel back the layers of this story, which, by the way, officials themselves have called a preventable, system-created disaster.
To really get a handle on this, you first have to understand the paradox at the heart of it all. It's this wild contrast between Indore's shiny, pristine public image and the grim reality that was unfolding on the ground.
And this slide, it just perfectly captures that split personality. You've got Indore the winner on one side, this model city everyone looks up to, and on the other side, a full-blown public health emergency, a total, lethal failure of the most basic thing a city's supposed to do, give its people safe water to drink.
And behind all the awards, you have this number, 15 plus. That's the official death toll after a state audit, more than 15 people dead. And that doesn't even count the over 1,400 others who got seriously ill. This number just cuts through all the noise.
Okay, so what went wrong? I mean, how does sewage actually get into the drinking water supply? Well, the investigation turned into something like a crime scene, and it all came down to a single catastrophic point of failure.
And here it is. This is ground zero. A toilet. Specifically, a toilet at a police outpost, built directly over a main drinking water pipeline. Investigators traced the source of the contamination right to this spot in the Bhagirathpura neighborhood. It was a ticking time bomb, built in a way that just defied all basic safety standards.
It's almost unbelievably simple and horrifying. Let's walk through it. First, the toilet gets built without a proper septic tank, so raw sewage just drains into an open pit in the ground. Now, right below that pit is a 30-year-old water pipe, and it's cracked. So what happens? All that waste just seeps down and gets into the drinking water. And from there, it's pumped directly into people's homes. A disaster in 4 easy steps.
Okay, and here's a really key piece of the puzzle. It's a concept called back siphonage. See, in Indore, like a lot of cities in India, the water supply isn't on 24/7. When they shut the water off, the pressure inside the pipes drops. This creates a kind of vacuum. So that leaky pipe, the vacuum effect actively sucked the raw sewage in. The pipe literally became a straw, pulling poison from the ground into the water system.
And of course, the lab results came back and confirmed everyone's worst nightmare. We're talking Vibrio cholerae, fecal coliform, E. coli. These are the kinds of pathogens you find in raw sewage, and they were the direct cause of the sickness that was flooding the city's hospitals.
But here's the thing. This wasn't some freak accident that came out of nowhere. Not at all. As we're about to see, this was a disaster that was years in the making. It was the predictable result of just systemic neglect and a whole lot of ignored warnings. Just look at this timeline. As early as December, people knew something was wrong. They were complaining about foul-smelling, discolored water. They were calling the chief minister's helpline. But these alarms, these cries for help, they just got swallowed up by bureaucracy. Nothing happened until people started getting sick en masse.
And this might be the most damning part of the entire story. 5 years before the tragedy, a government audit from the Comptroller and Auditor General, the CAG, basically wrote the script for this exact disaster. They warned them.
I mean, just look at these numbers from the audit. The city was losing up to 70% of its clean, treated water to leaks. 70%. And if you reported a leak, how long did it take to fix? Anywhere from 22 days to, get this, 182 days. That's half a year. The system was fundamentally broken long before it started killing people.
The auditors themselves used this phrase, staggering lethargy. That just says it all, doesn't it? It points to this culture where thousands of complaints could pile up and the city's old pipes were just left there, like a ticking time bomb under the streets.
So as the crisis exploded and it was all over the news, the system finally lurched into action. The government and the courts, they had to respond, and they responded hard.
The chief minister called it an emergency, and almost immediately, heads started to roll. The municipal commissioner, gone. Zonal officer, assistant engineer, suspended. The deputy engineer was straight up sacked.
People were being held accountable for what was, frankly, a gross failure to do their jobs.
And then the High Court got involved, and they took things to a whole new level. They said, look, this isn't just a leaky pipe problem. This is a grave constitutional failure. They framed access to safe water as part of the right to life, a fundamental human right. And crucially, they ordered that all records be preserved, basically to make sure nobody could cover their tracks.
The National Green Tribunal, the NGT, they jumped in too. And their take was, hey, this isn't just an Indore problem. They saw it as a symptom of a much bigger failure across the whole state. So they demanded huge changes, like creating a 24/7 water complaint app so that people's warnings could never, ever be ignored again. So, okay, this is a terrible story about one city. But why does it matter on a national level? Because what happened in Indore, it shines a massive spotlight on a dangerous blind spot in how we think about our cities.
And here's the real lesson, the big takeaway. For so long, the goal has been about access, getting a tap in every home. But Indore proves, in the most tragic way possible, that just having a tap means nothing if the water coming out of it is poison. Access without quality isn't just useless, it can be a death sentence.
And this chart really shows you the scale of the problem nationally. We see that 96% of households have access to an improved water source. Sounds great, right? But here's the catch. Improved doesn't mean safe to drink. And that huge gap between having a tap and having safe water, that's exactly where the Indore tragedy happened. And make no mistake, experts are screaming this from the rooftops, Indore is not a one-off. The same dangerous cocktail, old, leaky pipes right next to sewer lines, combined with a water supply that's on and off, that exists in so many of our big cities. Indore isn't just a tragedy, it's a massive wake-up call.
Which brings us to the final and maybe most important question. If the water that people are drinking isn't safe, how clean is that city really? This whole ordeal forces us to look beyond the shiny awards and clean streets and ask what true cleanliness means. And maybe the answer starts not with what we can see, but with the invisible essential lifelines buried right under our feet.